here because, well, you need to get a handle on things fast and right now.
Mm-hmm.
That probably means figuring out the whole maze of layoffs and employment law.
Yeah, especially with, the real possibility of a second Trump administration looming and what kinds of shifts that might actually bring.
Exactly. So we've been digging into this resource. It's called Don't Lose Another Dollar, Master Labor Law, NOW.PDF.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And our goal today really is to pull out the key stuff for you. Help understand the best ways to handle layoffs and maybe get a sense of what legal changes could be coming down the pipe.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The document, it starts with this really strong idea. Knowledge is power, legal knowledge is potential power, specifically in employment law.
And it makes the point immediately that, look, layoffs, terminations, they're not unusual. They're happening across loads of different industries.
And it's not like the old days, right? The whole hire and fire thing.
Not at all. The material really emphasizes how much that's now shaped by, well, pretty significant legal and labor law changes. It's definitely not as simple as it might have seemed once.
Right, and then there's this other layer we're all dealing with, remote work, hybrid work.
Oh, yeah. That has a whole new dimension.
It really does. Employment law is scrambling to keep up, and that just adds more complexity when you're talking about workforce reductions.
So if you take a step back, it becomes, well, really clear how vital it is for everyone, companies, employees, to stay informed. The ground isn't exactly solid, it's shifting.
And this resource suggests we could be seeing some pretty big shifts relatively soon.
Which leads us right into the potential impact of a second Trump administration. Now, this is where the document gets quite specific.
Okay.
It points towards expected changes at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC.
Right, the EEOC. What kind of changes?
The main expectation is less focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, in terms of like the EEOC's priorities and also how they gather data.
Okay, less focus on DEI reporting and priorities.
Exactly. And the document actually reminds us, back in 2017, the first Trump administration rolled back some of those EEOC reporting requirements.
Ah, right. I remember that.
Yeah, so the thinking is something similar might happen again. For you listening, this could mean, well, maybe less federal pressure on certain DEI metrics.
But that doesn't mean companies should just drop it, right?
Oh, absolutely not. If anything, it might mean companies need to be even more on top of their internal DEI efforts and compliance, without that same level of federal oversight pushing them. Maybe time to check those internal audits.
Good point. So this reduced federal focus is one potential outcome. The document also mentions the EEOC's current structure.
Yeah, it just lays it out. 5 commissioners, that includes the chair. And right now, there's a Democratic majority set to last until 2026.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Well, yeah. The document raises the question, what if the administration appoints a new chair before 2026?
Oh. And that's likely?
The source suggests it's pretty likely, yeah. And that new chair, even with the same commissioners for a while, could definitely steer the EEOC's agenda, its enforcement focus.
So even with that Democratic majority on paper?
Right. The chair has significant influence. So if a Trump administration puts in a new chair, the agency's direction could change quite a bit, even before that 2026 date.
Okay, so what's the bottom line here for our listeners?
Well, according to the source, it really just highlights the need to be proactive, stay alert. These potential changes could really reshape the employment law landscape.
How companies handle reporting, workplace priorities,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Exactly. And it's not just these big picture regulatory shifts either. The document also tackles a really specific common misunderstanding.
Oh, yeah.
This idea, this myth, that if an employee is pregnant or maybe on parental leave, they just can't be included in a layoff.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I could see people thinking that. So that's wrong.
That's just not accurate, according to our source. It's crystal clear on that.
So why do you think that myth persists? And what's the risk if companies act based on that wrong assumption?
Well, I think it comes from a good place, understanding anti-discrimination laws. But being pregnant or on leave, it doesn't grant total immunity from a legitimate RIF, a reduction in force.
Okay, so the key is legitimate and non-discriminatory.
Precisely. The layoff decision itself still has to comply with all the anti-discrimination laws, absolutely. But the pregnancy itself isn't a shield if the layoff is genuinely based on objective business needs.
Got it. Okay, so we've looked at the current scene, potential shifts. Let's get practical. If you're leading a team or running a business and you have to make that incredibly tough call layoffs, RIF, What are the best practices? How do you handle it right, legally, and ethically?
Yeah, the document gives some really solid advice here. It frames it as essential, really, and it starts with something fundamental: clear, concise communication.
Right, not just delivering bad news, but how you deliver it.
Exactly. It's about minimizing further disruption and, frankly, potential legal headaches down the road.
So, transparency, that's number one. The document says, explain the reasons clearly, straightforwardly, no jargon, no beating around the bush.
It's honest communication. And tied to that is timely notification. Give people as much advance notice as you possibly can. It's the decent thing to do. And often,
It's the law.
it's the law, yeah, like the WARN Act requirements.
We'll get to warn in a sec. But first, that human element.
Hugely important. The document stresses empathy, respect. You have to acknowledge the massive impact this has on people's lives.
Treating them with understanding. It seems obvious, but maybe it isn't always practiced.
Well, it can make a very tough situation slightly less painful.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, reduce the chances of things turning really sour later. Plus, from the employee side, if they understand why, even if they hate it, they might engage more constructively.
Okay, let's talk legal compliance. Avoiding those pitfalls. The WARN Act you mentioned.
Right, the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act.
Yep.
Big one.
What triggers it? When does it kick in?
So, the document explains it generally applies if you're laying off a significant number of people. Usually, think 50 or more within 30 days, or if it's 33% of your workforce, whichever number is bigger.
So it's about scale, either absolute numbers or relative to the company size.
Exactly. The law cares when it's a big hit, either numerically or proportionally. And it's worth remembering, the source notes this can apply to state and local government employees too, not just private companies.
And the requirement is?
60 days advance notice. That's the core requirement.
Why 60 days?
It's basically to give workers and even the wider community a bit of time to prepare, to adjust to potentially large job losses.
Okay, that 60-day notice is crucial. Messing that up can mean big penalties. What else on the legal front?
Contracts. The document says you absolutely have to review employment contracts, any collective bargaining agreements, look for specific clauses about layoffs or termination.
Makes sense. And then there's state and local laws.
Definitely. Don't forget those. The source really emphasizes this federal law isn't the whole picture. States, even cities, might have their own specific rules about layoffs. You need to know those too.
Okay, now the really tricky part. Deciding who. How do you select employees fairly?
This is critical. The document stresses using fair and consistent selection criteria.
Objective criteria.
Objective and consistent, yes. Decisions have to be based on legitimate business needs. Things like documented performance, required skills for the future, maybe eliminating a specific role entirely.
And absolutely not based on...
Anything discriminatory. Age, race, religion, sex, disability. None of that should factor into the selection. It has to be purely business-driven and objective.
And then you need to write it down.
Document everything. That's another key point from the source. Clearly record the reasons why specific employees were selected. What criteria did you use? How did you apply them?
Creates that paper trail.
Exactly. Invaluable if questions or legal challenges come up later.
Okay, so that covers the legal must-dos. What about things that are more like best practices? Supporting people.
Right. The document touches on those too. Things like offering severance packages.
That financial cushion can make a huge difference for people transitioning.
It really can. And also providing access to outplacement services.
What does that involve? Like resume help, job searching?
Yeah, things like that. Resume writing, interview coaching, job search strategies. It shows you're trying to help people land on their feet. It's a gesture of support.
Important gestures. What about the people who aren't laid off? The ones who remain?
Also critical. The document highlights addressing their concerns. Layoffs create anxiety, uncertainty.
Survivor guilt sometimes, fear they're next.
All of that.
Wow.
So open communication is key. Address their questions honestly. And then take active steps to try and maintain morale and keep productivity up.
Reassurance where possible, clear vision for the future.
Exactly. That helps stabilize things for the remaining team.
And finally, the document mentions workplace culture. How does that fit in?
Well, it sort of underpins everything, doesn't it? The source explains that a strong culture, shared values, open communication, really shapes how employees react, even during tough times like layoffs.
It makes sense if there's already a foundation of trust.
Even devastating news might be received with a bit more understanding, even though it's still painful. It influences attitudes and ultimately the organization's ability to weather the storm and succeed afterwards.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. So for you listening, we've really dug into why legal know-how is just crucial with layoffs.
Yeah, we looked at those potential shifts under a new administration, especially with the EEOC and DEI focus.
We busted that myth about pregnancy leave being automatic protection. It isn't.
And we walked through those best practices for handling RFs: communication, legal compliance, fairness, support.
Sure.
The whole package. It needs to be legally sound, but also, ethically responsible.
The big takeaway really seems to be what the source keeps saying. Being informed is absolutely essential. It's not optional.
Not just to dodge legal bullets, though that's important, but fundamentally, it's about treating people with respect during an incredibly difficult process.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe something for you to chew on after this.
Yeah, think about this. How can getting ahead of the curve, really understanding these employment law details, how can that do more than just cut legal risk?
How could it actually help build a workplace that's, more resilient, more respectful, no matter what's happening politically or economically?
It really pushes you to consider that balance, right? Between the necessary business decisions and the real human impact, the well-being of your employees. How do you navigate that tension effectively?
Thank you, viewers, for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with your colleagues. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking that subscribe button below so you never miss out on valuable insights. I'm Brian Edmonds, signing off. See you in the next one.